Step 3, the last step. This is when your ring comes together. It's beautiful, ready to send out. If you've missed the first 2 videos, or on accident or on purpose, step 1 is here, step 2 is there. I think they're gonna be somewhere, so click on them if you wanna see the regular or the previous steps. So today we're gonna do both a UV resin finish and then also a CA finish on the woods that we have. Just show 2 different types, and then probably next week we will test the 2 finishes to see which one we like better, which one holds up better, and which one is easier to apply and whatnot. So yeah, let's get into it. All right, going to the oak wood ring first on the lathe. I'm rubbing it down with acetone and also getting rid of any excess glue that might be on there. The way you can tell is if it has any shiny marks. So I'll rub off all the shiny marks or sand it down. And then I also only sanded to 220 before applying this. There's a couple different ways to apply the UV resin. I've found that this is the easiest, to spread it on there on a moving lathe. And then I use a toothpick to spread it around all evenly. And this makes sure it is even. It also makes it less work at the end that you have to do. One thing I might suggest, instead of doing your entire coat in one, is maybe doing a thin, really thin coat on the top layer, curing that, and then move on to the step that you're watching now. That would help with some air bubbles, I think. Now we're just using the toothpick to move it around to the edges as well, and then letting it keep rotating so that it keeps the uniformity, so we'd have less work once it's cured. And then while it's on the lathe, I'm using a heat gun to try to get rid of some air bubbles. Usually I like to use an open flame instead, because the flame pops them much better than the heat gun, but I could not find it, so I moved to the second best. And then while it's on there, I'm shining the UV light on there while it's on the lathe, rotating and moving. And then from there, we'll pop it into the curing box to finish curing on the outside. Once it's done in the box on the outside, put it in our Nova soft jaws. We just do the same thing to the inside, rotating slowly with a little toothpick to make sure that it gets evenly distributed around the inside. And again, making sure I go all the way to the edges. Again, the better you do this part, the less work you'll have to do once it's cured. And then same thing, trying to pop all the air bubbles with the heat gun. Open flame does work better. You would just want to be sure that you don't burn the resin at all. And then every UV resin has a perfect wavelength UV light that is preferred for curing the resin. So whatever resin you buy, just make sure you also get the correct light. And then also a higher watt light, the faster it'll cure. I'm using a 300 watt light, and this curing usually is about 10 minutes. Alright, so that's curing. We'll finish the bird's eye maple. And we're just on the drill, and this is where we'll use the zip tie again on a very low setting, rotating slowly on the drill. And what we're using is a socket bit taped with masking tape until the ring was a tight fit so it doesn't move around at all. And then I'm applying 2 to 3 dots of the thin CA. The same idea could work here too, where maybe 1 dot of CA spread around, just a really thin layer. Even maybe applying with a paper towel and then 2 or 3 dots may also give you a better finish. I've noticed sometimes if I add too many drops of CA at first, we have some problems. So with this also, I'm bringing it all the way to the edges. Ideally not getting it glued to the tape. That will make things a little bit harder for us. We also can get the edges in our soft jaws a little bit later as well, or I guess we're doing this by hand, so just by holding it correctly, you'll see this. And then we're using an aerosol accelerant, in which case I used way too much here. You see it fogged up, turned white. You do want to be careful of that. You may have to restart if that happens, and that's just because I sprayed too much. If I probably went half the time, it wouldn't have fogged up quite as bad. But seeing as we're just going to keep going, so don't apply too much accelerator. And if you do, I always use the aerosol can. It's a little easier to control. And then always with the CA, because it's always uneven, I usually take a 220 or 400, depending on how uneven it is, and just clean it up. You have enough finish on there if you do it this way that you're not going to sand the wood. So all you're trying to do now is just make the entire finish all even and smooth and prep it for polish. You don't want any high spots or bumps or crevices or anything like that with this finish. So that's what you're doing with 220 or 400, and just being careful that you don't go too far down to the wood. And the nice thing with CA is I usually only go to 400 or 800 before polishing, so you don't have to do too much. CA is soft enough. If you're using a right polish, it'll polish up very easily. And right now we're just clearing out the inside of this ring with some 220 sandpaper, getting it ready for the finish. I'm making sure there's no bubbles or extra dots of CA or anything like that, making sure it's really smooth. And also, this is a good point to bring up now as well. If your ring is too small, this is a good time to sand the inside to make it a little bit bigger. And then also, or if it's too big, it's a good time when you're doing the finish to keep adding layers of CA on the inside until you are to the size you need. So I'm just doing one drop at a time with a toothpick, spreading it around the inside and then also around the edges. And as the thin CA, it cures very quickly, so you don't have to worry about holding it and waiting forever for it to dry. And then I'm just rotating slowly. I have a little bubble or a little droplet in there, and so it's just rolling around as I roll the ring. And again, it's important to get this step and keep rolling it so that we don't have extra sanding to do or extra big bumps. And then a teeny bit of accelerant at this point is not going to hurt it, as it was mostly dry. And I'm also using accelerant, the aerosol, so that I can control the flow. And then I just moved it to the other side, and I'm using the toothpick to really spread it on the edges. And at this point, I just kind of drenched it just to make sure that it was ready for sanding. And then what we're going for is anywhere between 2.2 millimeters in thickness to 2.5 is usually what I try to go for. And so again, if you need to make it bigger or smaller in size, you're either taking off more wood or you're adding more CA. And that would be the same thing with both resin and the CA. So our sanding and application is done at this point. Now I go to the ZAM. We have the ZAM on our website as well. It's a wax-based polish. You just use it with either any sort of buffing wheel, either on your mandrel like this that I use for the inside of the ring, and I'm using a cotton wheel on my rotary tool here. And then also, so I use one cotton tool with the ZAM, and then I also have a clean one that will remove all the ZAM as well, any extra residue. And then if you have seen our other videos, we got this polisher a while ago. It works really well, so it's only, I think, $70, and it's a variable speed. And so we use this with all of our rings now. It's been awesome to have. But same thing with the resin. I'm just shining it up. Usually it doesn't need a whole ton of work, so it depends on how you applied the resin and how much work you had to do after the fact. So I'm just adding a little extra buffing to some of it. And then just like the rotary tool, so I use on one side of these with the polish compound and one is completely clean. And this clean side removes all the residue, just cleans up the ring a little bit, and then I just bring it to the sink and wash it by hand for the rest of the way. Oh, and then the cleaning, on the polishing side, I'm at max RPM. On the cleaning side, I turn it way down, maybe a quarter of the way, so it's moving much slower. I've burned through a lot of finishes on the cleaning side. Alright, so we got both the rings, the bird's eye maple, and the probably oak wood finished. To be honest, I didn't do a great job on the resin finish, and that's just because I'm not used to it. I think it's hard. You can obviously see some air bubbles in there. But anyway, so this ends the Bentwood tutorial. This is 3 of 3. Again, if you need to watch the second video or the first video, go back and take a peek at those. They are useful. And then also, if you like the way that these were done, very slow, very step by step, let us know in the comments. And if you, again, we'll probably do maybe a little bit of both, depending on the response we get for these videos. And then also always comment if you want to see something specific done, let us know as well, because I'm happy to try really anything. So let us know in the comments. Thank you guys for watching. If you hit that like button and subscribe, that would help us out a ton. We are working to get videos out every week, and we want them to be useful, something that you guys can learn with, something that you can just enjoy watching. So appreciate all your support. Take a look at all the affiliate links below. That's all the tools that we use, as well as our website and supplies that we use, including the glue that we have. And y'all have a good one. Thank you.